All right, welcome back everyone to another deep dive. And today we've got like this special treat for all you UPSC aspirants out there.
Yeah, we've got this like daily dose of current affairs,
Mm.
all ready to sort of like supercharge your prelims prep.
Yeah, because I mean, just knowing the facts isn't really going to cut it for the UPSC, right? You need that like deeper understanding to analyze and, form opinions.
Exactly. We're going to go beyond just, what's on the surface of the news, right? We're going to unpack the why behind the what, and that's going to give you guys the edge you need.
Absolutely. So are you ready to dive in and unearth those crucial insights that could really make a difference in your exam?
I know, I am. We've got a super interesting lineup today.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, I
Yeah.
think. All right, so let's start with something that, might seem a little bit dry at first, but it's actually really crucial for understanding India's economic landscape. The Export Inspection Council, or EIC for short.
Yeah.
So, there was this recent study about food testing infrastructure for exports, and it got me thinking about India's place in the global marketplace.
Yeah. That's a great starting point, because the EIC is really like this gatekeeper for Indian exports, right? They're the ones making sure everything meets the international quality and safety
Right,
standards.
so they're kind of like the quality control officers ensuring that everything that leaves India is, top notch.
Exactly. And they've got a long history, too.
Yeah.
They were set up back in 1963 under the Export Quality Control and Inspection Act, and they're responsible for mandatory certification for like a ton of different products, from food to textiles. It's really about ensuring consumer safety and, boosting India's reputation on the world stage.
I see. So this is pretty relevant for the UPSC syllabus then, right?
Oh, absolutely. Understanding bodies like the EIC is like key for the Indian economy section. And, it's not just about economics either. It's about diplomacy. It's about national prestige.
Wow. I hadn't thought about it like that. It's amazing how these seemingly technical topics actually have these really broad implications.
Yeah, they do.
While we're talking about quality, I remember coming across another organization, the Quality Council of India, or QCI. Is there any overlap there?
That's a good question. And, while both organizations deal with quality in some way, their roles are actually quite distinct.
Okay.
So you can think of the EIC as like the specialist focusing specifically on exports, right? Whereas the QCI, they're more like a generalist. They work across different sectors within India to, elevate the overall quality standards.
Okay, so EIC looks outward, QCI looks inward.
Exactly.
You got it. Okay, so that's our little explainer on, quality control in India. All right, now let's switch gears a little bit and move on to something a little bit more, how do I say this, captivating. Have you ever heard of Rani Velu Nachiyar?
Oh, Rani Velu Nachiyar. She is an incredible figure in Indian history. She's often hailed as the first queen in India to fight against the British, and her story is one of courage and resilience, fighting for what she believed in.
I was reading about her, and she sounds like a total badass. She was a princess, a skilled warrior, fluent in multiple languages. Talk about shattering those stereotypes.
Oh, for sure. Rani Velu Nachiyar was born in 1730, the princess of Ramanathapuram. And, in addition to her royal duties, she was also trained in warfare weaponry and even mastered languages like English, French, and Urdu.
French and Urdu? That's super impressive for the 18th century.
Absolutely. She was clearly a woman way ahead of her time.
Yeah, she really was.
And her skills in martial arts like Valori and Silambam, this traditional stick fighting technique, these really gave her an advantage on the battlefield. But, what really sets her apart is her fierce determination to, resist British rule.
For sure. And, her story is a powerful reminder of the often untold narratives of women in history, especially when we talk about leadership and resistance.
You're absolutely right, and it directly connects to your UPSC preparation, Rani Velu Nachiyar's struggle really embodies these themes of resistance against colonialism, women's empowerment, regional history, and these are all, crucial aspects of the modern Indian history syllabus. And remember, the UPSC exam isn't just about dates and facts, it's about understanding the nuance of history.
That's a really great point. It's about, connecting those dots and seeing the bigger picture. Now, speaking of connections, you mentioned Silambam, and I was curious, isn't that martial art still practiced today?
Yes, it is. Silambam is actually still practiced today, and it's evolved into this really modern and scientific martial art. And it's got this really rich history dating back to, the Pandyas, Cholas, and Cheras dynasties.
It's amazing how these ancient traditions live on.
They really do.
Okay, are you ready to dive into the world of science and conservation now?
Let's do it.
All right, so researchers in Kochi have achieved something pretty amazing. They've successfully developed a captive breeding program for the endangered black-collared yellow catfish.
That's fantastic news. This catfish, scientifically known as Horobagris nigricolaris, is unique to the Western Ghats and unfortunately, faces a threat from habitat loss. So this is a big win for conservation.
So what makes this catfish so special?
Well, it has these really distinctive greenish-brown markings and shorter barbels compared to other catfish, and it also possesses these really unique genetic traits. And, it's listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List, so protecting it is crucial.
Right, so this breeding program offers a glimmer of hope for this endangered species.
It does. It really does. The program was started in 2020 at the National Bureau for Fish Genetic Resources, or NBFGR, and the successful breeding of this first generation is a huge step towards preserving the species.
And this is something to keep in mind for the UPSC Environment and Ecology section, right? Topics like biodiversity and endangered species always seem to come up. So could you tell us a little bit more about the NBFGR and the work they do?
Sure. So the NBFGR was established back in 1983, and it's a really key player in the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. They're focused on researching and conserving fish germplasm resources, which basically means they're working to protect the genetic diversity of fish.
It's like they're safeguarding the building blocks of life for these aquatic creatures. And, this ties in really well with something I learned about recently called aquaculture.
Oh, yeah. Aquaculture is basically like farming, but underwater. It's about cultivating aquatic organisms, in controlled environments, whether it's tanks, ponds, or even ocean enclosures.
So instead of relying on wild fish stocks, we're creating a sustainable way to produce seafood.
Exactly. Aquaculture is becoming increasingly important to meet, this growing global demand for seafood.
It's like having underwater farms. Pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Okay, ready for another deep dive into history? This time we're traveling back to the 13th century with the recent discovery of an idol of Saint Narahari Tirtha.
Saint Narahari Tirtha, he was a prominent Dvaita Vedanta philosopher and, a revered saint in the Madhva tradition. He was a disciple of Madhvacharya himself and played a crucial role in spreading Dvaita philosophy across Eastern India.
So he was like a key figure in shaping religious thought during that time.
Oh, absolutely. His influence can be seen in the Kalinga region, which encompasses present-day Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. And he's actually credited with strengthening the Madhva tradition in Odisha.
Oh.
And his legacy is very much intertwined with the temple traditions of Puri Jagannath.
It's amazing how these figures from the past continue to shape the present.
They really do.
This is definitely something to note for the medieval history section of the UPSC, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, understanding these religious figures like Saint Narahari Tirtha, it gives you a window into the social and cultural dynamics of that period.
Right. It's not just about memorizing names. It's about understanding context.
And Saint Narahari Tirtha wasn't just a philosopher. He was a patron of the arts as well. He is believed to have contributed to the development of art forms like Yakshagana Bailata and even Kuchipudi.
So one person can have a ripple effect across history and culture. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
Okay, are you ready for a complete change of scenery? Let's blast off to Jupiter's moon, Europa.
Let's go.
So scientists have made a recent discovery that's creating a lot of buzz in the astronomy world. It turns out that the icy crust on Europa might be much thicker than we initially thought, which could have implications for the search for extraterrestrial life.
That's interesting. Europa has always been like a prime candidate for finding life beyond Earth. It's slightly smaller than our own moon, but beneath its icy shell, scientists believe there's this vast saltwater ocean. And, this ocean is thought to potentially harbor the ingredients for life.
Wow, a whole ocean beneath the ice. It's like something straight out of a science fiction movie. But if the ice is thicker than expected, does that make it more difficult to explore this hidden ocean?
Yeah, it does. It definitely poses a challenge for scientists. Reaching that subsurface ocean would require drilling through a much thicker layer of ice.
I see, so it complicates things a bit. And speaking of exploring Europa, didn't NASA recently launch a mission there?
They did. The Europa Clipper launched back in October 2024, and it's currently on its way to Jupiter. And its main mission is to study Europa's icy shell, the subsurface ocean, and of course assess its potential for habitability.
That's so cool. It's exciting to think about the possibility of discovering evidence of life beyond Earth. Now, this whole conversation about moons and planets reminded me we should probably clarify what a satellite is for those who might not be familiar with the term.
Good point. So a satellite is basically any object that orbits a planet or a star. So Earth is a satellite of the sun, and the moon is a satellite of Earth.
And anything we launch into orbit around Earth, like spacecraft and communication satellites, are also considered satellites, right? Okay, back down to Earth now for a topic that's making headlines in India. The Polavaram Project, a massive infrastructure development on the Godavari River. The Telangana government has even brought in experts from IIT Hyderabad to study its potential impact.
It's a major project, and understanding these large-scale infrastructure projects is really important for your UPSC preparation. So the Polavaram project, located in Andhra Pradesh, is basically a multi-purpose irrigation project. It aims to tackle water scarcity,
Hmm.
boost agricultural productivity, and even generate hydroelectric power.
Wow, it sounds like a huge undertaking. Could you give us a sense of the scale of this project?
Sure, so the project includes a dam that's over 1.2 kilometers long, with a pier height of 54 meters and 48 radial gates. Its spillway capacity is even greater than China's Three Gorges Dam, making it, one of the largest irrigation projects in India.
Wow, that's massive. But I imagine a project this big also has its share of challenges and concerns, right?
Of course, large-scale infrastructure projects always have potential environmental and social impacts, so those need careful consideration.
Right, and that's something to keep in mind for the current affairs and events section of the UPSC exam. Understanding both the benefits and drawbacks of these large-scale projects is crucial.
Absolutely. You've got to look at it from all angles.
All right, on to our next topic, which takes us from these massive dams to something incredibly tiny cowpea seeds that were actually sent into space by ISRO.
That's right. It's a really cool experiment showing how space, technology, and agriculture can intersect. So cowpea, also known as black-eyed peas, is this really nutritious and resilient legume that many people around the world rely on for food.
So why send cowpea seeds to space? Did they actually grow up there?
They did. The seeds were exposed to microgravity conditions on an ISRO mission, and they sprouted. This experiment is part of a larger effort to understand how plants adapt to the really harsh environment of space.
So it's like taking baby steps towards growing food beyond Earth. That's wild.
It is pretty wild, and the goal isn't just about having fresh food in space. These experiments are essential for learning how plants deal with microgravity, radiation, and the limited resources they have up there.
I see. So it's about figuring out how to create sustainable life support systems for those long-duration space missions.
Exactly. Imagine a future where astronauts can grow their own food on spacecraft or even on other planets.
That would be incredible. And I bet those findings could also help improve agriculture here on Earth as well, right?
You got it.
Now, since we're on the topic of food and nutrition, let's just quickly define what vitamins are, just to refresh our memories.
Good idea. So vitamins are basically organic compounds that our bodies need in small amounts to function properly. They play a role in everything from growth and development to immunity and protecting us from diseases.
They're like those tiny but powerful nutrients that keep everything running smoothly.
Exactly.
Okay, our next topic is about a technology that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, nanopore technology.
Yeah, nanopore technology is really revolutionizing things, especially in disease detection and genetic analysis. It's like having this microscopic detective that can pinpoint individual molecules with incredible precision.
Okay, I'm hooked. Can you break it down for me? What exactly is nanopore technology?
So picture this. You've got a membrane with these tiny nano-sized holes like a superfine sieve. As molecules pass through these holes, they cause changes in electrical conductivity, and those changes can be detected and analyzed.
So it's like each molecule has its own electrical fingerprint,
Exactly.
and nanopore technology can read those fingerprints.
Yeah.
It's incredible. How does this compare to traditional methods of analysis?
Well, for one, it's much cheaper and easier to use. You don't need all that bulky equipment. Plus, it gives you real-time analysis, so you get results faster.
Yeah.
And it's super versatile. You can use it to analyze all sorts of biological molecules, from DNA and RNA to proteins and even smaller molecules like metabolites.
It sounds like nanopore technology has the potential to really transform healthcare, diagnostics, and even personalized medicine.
Oh, absolutely. It really is a game changer.
Speaking of health, let's talk about a disease that's been in the news lately. Rabbit fever, also known as tularemia.
Yeah, tularemia is a rare but potentially serious bacterial infection caused by the bacterium Francisella tularensis. And while it's more common in the Northern Hemisphere, it's important to be aware of it because, it can occur anywhere in the world where those bacteria and its animal hosts are found.
So it's a zoonotic disease. That means it can jump from animals to humans, right? How do people typically get infected?
Most commonly through tick bites, deer fly bites, or contact with infected animals like rabbits and rodents. And in some cases, people can even get infected by inhaling contaminated aerosols.
So it's important to take precautions when handling animals and being out in nature.
Absolutely.
What about the symptoms? What should we look out for?
Well, the symptoms can vary depending on how the bacteria enters the body, but some common ones include skin ulcers, swollen lymph nodes, eye irritation, fever, chills, and fatigue.
That sounds pretty nasty. What should someone do if they think they might have tularemia?
Well, it's really important to seek medical attention immediately if you're experiencing any unusual symptoms, especially after being in contact with ticks or wild animals.
So early diagnosis and treatment are key.
Exactly.
Okay, let's end on a lighter note with news of a celestial show, the quadrantid meteor shower.
Ah, yeah. This is the first major meteor shower of the year. It usually peaks in early January. What makes it unique is that it actually comes from an asteroid, not a comet, like most other meteor showers.
Oh, really? That is interesting. So where can we catch this meteor shower?
The quadrantids, they appear to radiate from the constellation Bootes, which is visible in the northern hemisphere, and the best time to see them is during the peak, which unfortunately only lasts a few hours.
So you got to be lucky to catch it.
You do.
And while we're on the topic of all things celestial, let's quickly remind everyone what a constellation is.
Right. So a constellation is basically a group of stars that when you look at them from Earth, form a recognizable pattern. You know, it's like a giant cosmic connect the dots puzzle that humans have used for centuries to navigate, tell stories, and understand the night sky.
I love it, a giant connect the dots puzzle. So some of the most famous ones are like Ursa Major, which is also known as the Big Dipper, and Ursa Minor with the North Star.
And let's not forget Orion with its iconic belt and Taurus the bull.
So many. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, from the nitty-gritty of exports to the vast expanse of space.
We sure have.
And before we move on to the next part, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the rest of our exploration of current events.
We'll be back with more insightful connections and valuable information to help you on your UPSC journey. And we're back for round 2 of our deep dive into current events. You ready to keep exploring?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. We were just talking about the quadrantid meteor shower and those constellations, and it struck me that astronomy is actually a pretty important topic for the UPSC Science and Technology syllabus.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's not just about recognizing, the Big Dipper. It's about understanding celestial bodies, astronomical events, and, even the basics of space exploration.
Right, so like ISRO's missions, satellite technology, all that stuff could be fair game on the exam.
For sure.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit and revisit a topic we mentioned earlier, hydropower. We talked about it in the context of that Polavaram Project, but we didn't really explain what it is.
Right. Well, hydropower is basically about harnessing the energy of flowing water to generate electricity.
Okay.
It's one of the oldest and, most reliable forms of renewable energy that we have.
So instead of burning fossil fuels, we're using water to power things.
Exactly. We're taking advantage of nature's power.
That's pretty cool. So how does it actually work, though?
So imagine a river flowing downhill, right? We build a dam to create a reservoir, which is like a big pool of water at a higher elevation. And then we control the release of that water through turbines.
Okay.
The force of that water spinning the turbines is what generates the electricity.
So the higher the dam, the more energy we can create.
Basically, yeah. The higher the dam and the greater the volume of water, the more power you can generate. And that's why those large-scale projects like the Polavaram Project are so important for India's renewable energy goals.
It's like we're building giant batteries powered by water.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about nanopore technology again.
Yeah.
We discussed its potential in disease detection, but I'm curious about its applications in other fields.
Oh, yeah. Nanopore technology is super versatile. It's like this molecular toolkit that you can use for all sorts of things.
Like what?
Well, for example, in agriculture, it can be used for, rapid DNA sequencing of crops and livestock, which helps us develop disease-resistant varieties and improve breeding programs. And in environmental monitoring, it can be used to analyze water quality, detect pollutants and identify those microorganisms in soil.
So it's like this microscopic detective that can help us solve all kinds of problems.
Exactly.
And what about forensics? I feel like that's a natural fit.
Yeah, absolutely. It can help with DNA analysis at crime scenes. And even in the food industry, you can use it for quality control, identifying pathogens and even tracing the origin of food products.
It's amazing how many applications there are for this one technology.
It is pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, let's revisit rabbit fever or tularemia again.
Yeah.
We mentioned that it's been on the rise in the U.S. Should people in India be worried about it too?
Well, tularemia is more common in the northern hemisphere, but it's important to remember that infectious diseases don't really respect borders.
True.
The bacteria that cause tularemia, they can be found all over the world wherever the animal hosts live. So while it's still considered rare, it's definitely something to be aware of.
So what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, the best thing you can do is avoid handling sick or dead animals, especially rabbits and rodents. And if you have to handle them, wear gloves and protective clothing.
Okay.
And be careful in areas where ticks are common. Use insect repellent cover-up when you're in those wooded areas.
Right, so it's all about taking common sense precautions.
Exactly.
Okay. We were talking about those cowpea seeds germinating in space earlier, and it got me wondering what other kinds of plants have been grown in space.
Oh, astronauts have experimented with all kinds of plants, from leafy greens like lettuce and spinach to root vegetables like radishes. They've even grown flowering plants like zinnias up there.
Wow, so they're like creating these little gardens in space.
They are. And it's not just about having fresh food in space. It's about figuring out how plants can adapt to that unique environment.
I see.
They're dealing with microgravity radiation and limited resources. So it's really important research for figuring out how to create sustainable life support systems for long-duration space missions.
It's incredible to think that we could someday be growing food on other planets.
I know, right?
And, learning from those experiments could help us improve agriculture here on Earth as well.
Exactly. By studying how plants survive in those extreme environments, we can get ideas for developing more resilient crops that can withstand things like drought or extreme temperatures.
It's like we're taking inspiration from the cosmos to solve earthly problems.
I like that.
Okay, before we wrap up this segment, I have a question for all our listeners out there. We've been talking about all these different current events, but how can you, as UPSC aspirants, make sure you're staying on top of everything?
That's the million-dollar question. Staying informed is key for any UPSC aspirant.
So what do you recommend?
Well, make it a habit to read newspapers, magazines, and online news sources that cover, current affairs, both national and international. And don't just passively read, engage with the material critically. Think about different perspectives, form your own opinions, and try to see the connections between events.
So it's about being an active learner and making those connections.
Exactly. That's how you develop that critical thinking and analytical skills, which are so important for the UPSC.
Great advice. All right, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed so far and get ready for our final segment, where we'll tie it all together and leave you with something to think about. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. We've covered so much ground today, from export regulations to space exploration and everything in between.
That's been quite a journey.
It really has. So as we wrap up, let's take a moment to kind of distill the key takeaways. Because just memorizing facts isn't enough for the UPSC, right? You need to be able to analyze, connect the dots, and really grasp the why behind the what.
Absolutely. It's like you're building this mental map of the world, with each current event being a new landmark on that map. And your job is to understand not only where that landmark is, but how it relates to the bigger picture.
I love that analogy. So it's about understanding the interconnectedness of events, recognizing cause and effect, and, seeing those larger trends that are shaping our world.
Exactly. And, the learning doesn't stop when this deep dive ends. We encourage you to keep exploring, read more, and keep adding to that mental map.
Absolutely. Curiosity is your superpower when it comes to the UPSC. Don't be afraid to delve deeper into the topics that you find interesting, research to different perspectives, and challenge yourself to see those connections in new ways.
You got it.
Now, as we conclude our deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder. We talked about Rani Velu Nachiyar, this incredible woman who defied expectations and fought for her kingdom. And she's just one example of countless women throughout history who have made such significant contributions.
It really makes you think about how we can ensure that those stories are not forgotten, but are celebrated and learned from.
Right. How can we keep challenging those stereotypes and create a world where everyone has the opportunity to, reach their full potential?
Important question.
They are. And remember, the UPSC exam isn't just about passing a test. It's about becoming an informed and engaged citizen who can really make a difference in the world. So keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and never stop expanding your understanding. Your UPSC journey is just the beginning of a lifetime of learning and, hopefully making a positive impact.
I couldn't agree more.
And we'll be here to support you along the way with more deep dives, insightful discussions, and thought-provoking explorations. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our future episodes.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those spirits high. Good luck on your UPSC journey.